As many of you know, my book comes out next week, and leading up to it, I am going to use parts of the book to make new critiques of what's going on today. Now, these are not going to be repeats from the book, but rather it's ideas in the book applied to what we are seeing today. And one of the major arguments I make in the Echo Machine is that the right-wing media ecosystem has made the concept of shared facts impossible. When one half of the country doesn't believe climate change is real, insists the 2020 election was stolen, claims vaccines contain microchips, there's really no conversation to be had. But here's the thing, even when we do manage to agree on the facts, that doesn't mean that we agree on what the problem we're trying to solve is. And I believe that that's just as dangerous. So, for example, take climate change. Problem one, which I talk about in my book, is that we have no shared basis in fact. A huge swath of the right resisted admitting that climate change was even happening. When they started to admit, okay, climate change is happening, they resisted the idea that humans play a role. Humans aren't possibly powerful enough to affect the climate of the planet. It has nothing to do with what humans are doing. When they couldn't resist that any further, they said, well, humans may play a role, but that role is tiny and it's not worth worrying about, and it's definitely not worth doing anything about. But even if we agreed on the facts, we would still have an issue of not agreeing on the problem. Let me explain to you what I mean. Liberals, progressives, the left, even most of the world's scientific community agrees that rising temperatures, extreme weather, sea level rise is a threat to humans on this planet, to life on this planet. It's more than just humans. The problem, as we might say it, is that human activity, fossil fuel burning, deforestation, industrial emissions is destabilizing the planet. It's going to make life harder. In some places, it's going to make life impossible. So our goal would be, let's reduce emissions, let's invest in renewables, let's prevent a catastrophe. That's how we would define the problem. Remember, this is when we've gotten them to agree on the facts. Climate change is happening and humans are playing a role, which we haven't even gotten to yet. But imagine that we did. We define the problem as I just did. The MAGA people, right wingers, whatever, even when they acknowledge climate change and human role in that, they don't see the same problem. To them, the real threat isn't a collapsing ecosystem. It's being forced to change their way of life. It's government intervention in stuff. When they think about climate action, they're not thinking about saving Miami from going underwater or preventing wildfires in California. They think about, do I have to give up my SUV? Do I have to give up my gas stove? Do I have to give up cheap flights to Florida? Their problem is not climate change itself. It's anything that threatens their immediate personal comfort and their consumption habits and their way of life. Even though, of course, over the long term, climate change will be very disruptive to their way of life. This disconnect is crucial because even when facts get through, the solutions are impossible when the problem is not agreed upon. Now, I've been talking about climate, but this happens across the board. In The Echo Machine, my book, I look at how right-wing media has systematically trained its audience to see entirely different problems than those outside the bubble. And when people don't even agree on what the issue is, you can't get to a solution. Here's some other examples. Healthcare. The left sees the problem as millions of Americans are unable to afford basic medical care, and the left wants to get everybody at least some coverage. The right would define the problem as government overreach into healthcare, socialism taking away private insurance. And so we aren't even on the same page as far as the problem goes. How do you fix a problem if you don't agree what the problem is? On wealth inequality, on the left, we see much of the problem as corporations and billionaires hoarding resources while workers struggle. The right sees the problem of inequality as lazy people not working hard enough. If the lazy people worked harder, there would be less inequality because they would have more money. A couple other examples. Crime. The left sees the problem of crime as systemic, related to poverty, and all of these circumstances lead to crime. The right sees the problem as woke DAs being soft on criminals who are just born to be criminals and are immutably going to be criminals. Hard to solve a problem when that's the way you see it. And then last example, education. The left tends to see the problems in education as public schools are underfunded and we need to invest more in education. The right sees the problem as woke teachers indoctrinating kids, and they oppose, in many cases, even the concept of public education. They want to privatize, they want vouchers, charter schools, private schools, etc. Every single one of these issues follows a really similar pattern, which is that even if you get past the misinformation, even if you get the MAGA voters to acknowledge the facts as they are, their definition of the problem is completely different, and you still have no way to really solve anything unless we can agree on that. One of the most damaging effects of the right-wing media ecosystem, the echo machine, as I call it in my book, The Echo Machine, is that it hasn't just taught people to believe things that aren't true. It has taught them to focus on the wrong problems. MAGA voters have been conditioned to see these manufactured crises, woke M&Ms, trans athletes, CRT in elementary schools. By the way, nobody talks about CRT anymore. Now it's DEI. They have been taught to see these contrived issues as existential threats, and they ignore the real problems: economic inequality, climate change, healthcare costs, poverty, etc. The result is perpetual outrage with no progress. The right gets to campaign on fighting wokeism, banning books, getting men out of women's sports, while avoiding the fact that they have no serious solutions to the real problems Americans are facing. This is a circle. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts. If the right-wing base is constantly focused on the wrong threats, they won't ever demand real change of the kind that we need. And if they never demand real change of the kind that we need, the people at the top, so Trump, Republican elites, right-wing media moguls, they get to keep their grip on power and nothing changes. So the message here, and part of what I talk about in the book, is that if we want to break out of this cycle, we can't just correct falsehoods. And intuitively, we've known this for a while. The conversation has to be reframed around actual problems. And one of the additional wrinkles that I've kind of thought about that's not in the book, but that I'm now kind of elaborating, is that we really need to connect policy to what happens in the real world. Sort of ironically, those two recent stories we did, man votes Trump, wife gets deported, and then yesterday, man votes Trump, wife gets arrested by ICE while awaiting citizenship papers. Those stories really connect policy to real world consequences. And so that's another aspect of this. It's something that corporate media has failed to do. It's something the left hasn't always really done well either, because getting someone to accept reality is step number one. The further challenge is often getting them to care about the right things. If this is all generally interesting to you, consider getting my book, The Echo Machine. It's out in 7 days. I'm told that pre-orders are going to start shipping this week. You could have your book very soon. Get a signed copy at davidpakman.com/booksmith, or otherwise order the book anywhere that books, ebooks, and audiobooks are sold. Did you know that 80% of New Year's resolutions fail by February? Lumen is something you can do for your health that's easy to stick to. Our sponsor, Lumen, is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. With a single breath first thing in the morning, Lumen measures your metabolism. It tells you, are you burning fat or are you burning carbs? And it'll give you tailored guidance for nutrition, workouts, sleep, and stress management. No more cookie cutter, one size fits all nutrition plans. Lumen lets you know what is happening in your body in real time and will build a personalized health plan based on that data. Lumen gives you daily macro recommendations based on what's happening with your metabolism so you can really fuel your body with what's best Right before a workout, breathe into Lumen and it'll tell you if you're burning carbs or fat. Lumen will tell you if you need to carb up before a workout for an energy boost or if you're good to go. Go to lumen.me/Pacman to get 20% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/Pacman for 20% off. The link is in the podcast notes.